Death in the Middle Ages was rarely private, and it was almost never merciful. Executions were not just punishments handed down by courts. They were carefully staged public events meant to educate the living through the suffering of the condemned. These were not moments of chaos or rage. They were planned, legal, and often carried out by highly trained professionals whose job was to extract the maximum lesson from a single human body. In town squares across Europe, crowds gathered not because they were bloodthirsty, but because attendance itself was part of obedience. What you were about to witness was the full authority of church and crown made visible. Today, we're examining 7 of the most brutal execution methods used in the Middle Ages, not as shock value, but as historical tools of control that shaped law, fear, and power for centuries. If you value serious history content that goes deeper than textbooks, take a second right now to like the video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, comment with which period you'd like covered next, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you think. Now, let's get into it. The 7 most brutal executions of the Middle Ages. Breaking on the wheel was honestly one of medieval Europe's most calculated displays of prolonged suffering. Used widely in the Holy Roman Empire and neighbouring regions, it was designed not for efficiency, but for endurance. Victims were restrained while their limbs were, systematically shattered, avoiding vital organs to prolong life. Survival for hours or even days was expected. The broken body was then woven into a wheel and raised high above the square, where exposure, shock, and scavenging animals completed the sentence. Mercy, if granted, came only at the discretion of the authorities and was never guaranteed. Sawing was reserved for crimes considered existential threats to the moral or political order. Practiced in parts of Central and Southern Europe, this execution relied on inversion to delay unconsciousness. The method was infamous not because of speed, but because of how deliberately it resisted it. Contemporary accounts describe crowds falling silent, not cheering, as the act unfolded. It was understood that witnessing such punishment was itself a warning. Boiling alive was most often imposed for counterfeiting, a crime seen as an attack on the sovereign's authority rather than mere theft. Boiling alive was most often imposed for counterfeiting, a crime seen as an attack on the sovereign's authority rather than mere theft. Whether the liquid was heated before or after immersion depended on the message the court wished to send. This execution lacked elegance, but its sensory impact lingered long after the square had emptied. It was meant to be remembered. Flaying, the removal of skin, dates back to antiquity but persisted into the medieval period as a punishment for treason and sacrilege. Precision mattered. Death came not immediately but through shock, exposure, and systemic failure. In some cases, preserved skin was displayed publicly, transforming the body into a permanent symbol of consequence. Hanged, drawn, and quartered was England's ultimate punishment for high treason. It was not a single execution, but a sequence. Transportation, partial hanging, disembowelment, and post-mortem division ensured that punishment extended beyond death itself. Body parts were distributed across the realm, turning geography into a network of reminders enforced by law. Impalement, most famously associated with Vlad the Impaler, functioned as psychological warfare as much as execution. The method's effectiveness lay in its visibility and duration. Entire landscapes of victims were created not to punish individuals, but to discourage armies. Burning at the stake was framed as purification. Used by secular and ecclesiastical courts alike, especially during periods of heresy panic, it erased the body entirely. Ashes were scattered to prevent memorialization, ensuring the condemned left no physical trace, only fear. Across all these methods, one figure stands apart: the executioner. Often shunned, legally restricted, and socially isolated, he was nonetheless essential. Many sought forgiveness from the condemned before carrying out the sentence, a quiet acknowledgement of shared humanity inside an inhuman system. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider the executioner's role, really. It's a position marked by contradiction, necessary yet reviled, and always at the centre of society's darkest rituals. These executions were never random. They were language, spoken through pain, understood by everyone who witnessed them. If you want more historically grounded content that explores how power, fear and authority shaped the world we inherited, make sure you're subscribed. Share this video with someone who loves real history, and let the algorithm know this kind of content still matters.